I've been married to Jessica for 6 years. It started off great. We were young, in love, and full of dreams. We bought our first home together, a cozy little place in the suburbs. It was everything we wanted, but life has a funny way of throwing curveballs. Over the last few months, I noticed some changes in her. Little things that I brushed off at first: her late-night work meetings, her increasing need for space, and the distant look in her eyes when I tried to connect with her. At first, I thought it was just stress from her job. Jessica works at a marketing firm, and I figured she was just overwhelmed with deadlines. But as days turned to weeks, things escalated. She became more secretive, often leaving her phone face down, and if I ever looked at her messages, she'd get defensive. I remember one time I asked if she wanted to go out for dinner, and she snapped at me, saying she was too busy for that. That was unlike her. Then came the day I found out the truth. I was working late at my job, which is at a tech company, when I decided to check my personal email. While scanning the messages, a notification popped up from our shared photo album. I clicked. My heart sank. There were pictures of Jessica, and not just playful selfies. She was with someone else. A man I recognized as the new security guard at my office, Greg. They were at a bar, laughing, and she was leaning into him in a way that made it clear this was more than just a friendly outing. I felt my stomach drop. I confronted her that evening, my heart pounding. I waited until she came home, and as soon as she walked through the door, I threw the photos onto the kitchen table. She froze, eyes wide. "What is this?" I demanded. The room was heavy with tension, the air thick and suffocating. Her first reaction was denial. "What are you talking about?" she said, but I could see the fear in her eyes. I laid the photos down in front of her. "You can't deny this." I was furious, and my voice trembled with a mix of anger and heartbreak. "You cheated on me with Greg." Her response was a pathetic attempt at rationalizing her actions. "It's not what you think, Jake. We were just hanging out. It didn't mean anything." She tried to brush it off like it was just a silly misunderstanding, but deep down I knew the truth. As I listened to her excuses, I felt a wave of emotions crashing over me: betrayal, anger, confusion. The woman I thought I knew had been lying to me. The warmth of love turned cold in an instant, replaced by a churning sea of pain. It was as if someone had ripped my heart out and stomped on it with heavy boots. I spent the night replaying everything in my mind. All the signs I had ignored, the late nights, the secretive behavior, the sudden need for privacy. I felt foolish for trusting her, for believing that our relationship was solid when it was anything but. But as the night wore on, I realized something had to change. This wasn't just about betrayal, it was about reclaiming my life. I wouldn't let her lie and manipulate me anymore. I needed a plan. I needed revenge. This wasn't going to be about winning her back. It was about ensuring she faced the consequences of her actions. I felt a spark of determination, and I knew I was ready to take action. Little did she know, I had a few tricks up my sleeve, and they all involved Greg. The morning after the confrontation, I woke up groggy and raw. It felt surreal, like I was living in a nightmare that I couldn't shake off. Jessica was next to me, her face buried in the pillow, but I didn't feel any comfort in her presence. I slipped out of bed quietly, careful not to wake her. I needed to think. As I made my way to the kitchen, I felt a mix of anger and determination bubbling inside me. I knew I couldn't confront Greg directly yet. I needed to be strategic. I wanted evidence, proof that he was the one who had shattered my world. After some thought, I decided to dig deeper into his background. I knew that Jessica's affair had been ongoing for a while, but I needed to know just how deep it ran. I started my investigation by scouring social media. It didn't take long to find Greg's profile. He wasn't too private. His posts were filled with pictures of him hanging out with friends, playing basketball, and of course a few selfies with Jessica. I felt a surge of rage as I scrolled through the images. They looked so happy together, so carefree. It made my stomach churn, but I pushed through the nausea. I couldn't back down now. As I pieced together the timeline of their affair, I noticed something interesting. Greg often posted late at night. Around the same time Jessica would leave for work events. It was obvious they had been sneaking around behind my back. I felt like a fool for not seeing it sooner, but that was the past. I had my sights set on revenge now. I decided to leverage my position at work. As the head of the IT department, I had access to the security logs. Over the next few days, I began to gather evidence of Greg's movements during the nights when Jessica was supposedly working late. I found a pattern, and it confirmed my suspicions. They were meeting up multiple times a week after hours. It was disgusting to see it laid out in cold, hard facts, but I felt a sense of empowerment. I wasn't just sitting back and letting this happen. I was in control. Once I had my evidence, I knew it was time to execute my plan. I reached out to a close friend of mine who worked in HR at my company. I casually mentioned some concerns I had about Greg's behavior. "You know, I've noticed he's been acting a bit off lately. It's almost like he's too friendly with some of the staff," I said, hoping to plant a seed of doubt in her mind without revealing too much. My friend picked up on my insinuation and promised to keep an eye on him. I felt a rush of adrenaline. This was just the beginning. I could see the pieces of my revenge falling into place, and I was excited to watch it unfold. Meanwhile, the tension at home was unbearable. Jessica was trying to act like nothing was wrong, but I could see through her facade. She would make small talk, laugh a little too loudly at jokes, and ask questions about my day, all while knowing that I had discovered her treachery. It was infuriating, and I could tell she was desperately trying to keep everything normal, but inside she had to know the truth hung like a dark cloud over our heads. One evening, as we were eating dinner, she mentioned a work event that she would have to attend. "There's a new security protocol we need to discuss," she said, her voice casual, but my heart raced. I knew Greg would be there. The thought of him being anywhere near her made my blood boil. I decided to play it cool. "Sounds like a big deal. Are you excited?" I asked, feigning interest. She smiled, oblivious to my inner turmoil. "Yeah, it should be fun. Plus, it's a chance to reconnect with the team." I wanted to scream, reconnect, with the man who had betrayed me. I was determined not to let this go unnoticed. I would have to be at that event too. I started to plot my appearance there and how I would make my presence known. I could already picture the look on Jessica's face when she saw me. The day of the event arrived, and I felt a mix of nerves and anticipation. I dressed sharply, wanting to look confident and unbothered. I arrived early and made sure to find a good spot where I could keep an eye on things without being too obvious. As the evening unfolded, I watched Jessica interact with Greg, her laughter ringing out through the crowd, and it stung worse than any knife. But soon, the moment I'd been waiting for arrived. I saw Greg slip away from the crowd for a moment, and I knew it was my chance to confront him. As I watched Greg step away from the crowd, my heart raced. This was the moment I had been planning for, the chance to confront the man who had wormed his way into my marriage and my life. I followed him discreetly, not wanting to attract attention. The event was buzzing with laughter and chatter, but I felt like I was moving in slow motion, every heartbeat echoing in my ears. I found him in a quieter area, leaning against a wall and scrolling through his phone. There was something so casual about him, as if he had no idea of the storm brewing just a few feet away. I took a deep breath, my anger simmering just below the surface, and stepped into his line of sight. "Greg," I said, my voice laced with tension. He looked up, surprise flickering across his face. "We need to talk." He shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting between me and the crowd. "What's going on, man? This isn't a good place to talk." I could hear the nervousness in his voice, and it fueled my rage. "Yeah, well, I don't really care about that," I replied, stepping closer. "I'm not here to make small talk. I know what's been going on between you and Jessica." His face fell, and for a split second I could see the fear in his eyes. "Look, man, it's not what you think. She told me you two were." "Spare me the excuses," I cut him off, anger boiling over. "I have the evidence. You think I'm going to let you get away with this? You think I'm just going to turn the other cheek while you play house with my wife?" He swallowed hard, clearly backing down. "I didn't mean for it to happen, Jake. It was a mistake. I thought she was single." I almost laughed at his feeble attempt to justify his actions. "A mistake? You think sleeping with my wife is a mistake? You've been sneaking around for months and you call that a mistake?" My voice was rising and I could feel the heat radiating off me. Greg shifted his weight, clearly regretting his choices. "I didn't want any of this to happen, it just kind of happened." "Right," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. And what were you thinking, that I would never find out, that you could just waltz around like you own the place? At that moment, I knew I had to dig deeper. You're going to pay for this, Greg. I'm not going to let you keep your job after what you've done. You've crossed a line that you can't uncross. I'm going to make sure you're gone. His eyes widened with realization, panic flooding his features. You wouldn't do that, I have a family. Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to sleep with mine. I shot back, turning on my heel and leaving him there. I felt exhilarated, my heart pounding with adrenaline. I had confronted him, and it felt good to remind him that I was in control. I returned to the main area of the event, where Jessica was mingling with others. The sight of her laughing and enjoying herself infuriated me. She had no idea what I had just done or the storm that was coming her way. I had a plan, and it was going to unfold soon enough. In the following days, I continued to gather evidence against Greg. I contacted my friend in HR, casually dropping hints about Greg's unprofessional behavior. I made sure she understood my concerns without revealing the full extent of my knowledge. My friend agreed to look into it, and I felt a sense of satisfaction knowing the wheels were in motion. Meanwhile, the tension at home with Jessica continued to escalate. She would ask about my day, trying to engage me in light conversation, but I was much colder, less willing to play along. One evening, she noticed my distance and confronted me. "Jake, what's going on? You're acting weird. Is this about the other night?" I looked at her, trying to gauge how much she knew. "What do you think?" I replied, my tone flat. She shifted uncomfortably, and I could see the defensiveness rising in her. "I told you it was nothing, just a misunderstanding. Is that what you really believe?" I challenged. She opened her mouth to respond, but I held up my hand to stop her. "I know about Greg, I know everything." Her expression shifted from confusion to a mixture of anger and fear. "What do you mean? You're being ridiculous." "Ridiculous? You think I'm being ridiculous for wanting to know why the man who's supposed to protect my workplace is also sleeping with my wife?" I felt the heat rising in my chest again, but I held back. I wanted to push her further, to see her squirm. "Jake, please, let's talk about this," she pleaded, trying to regain control of the conversation. "Oh, we'll talk," I promised, a bitter smile forming on my lips. "Just not right now." The days passed, and I felt like I was in a waiting game. I was patient, allowing the tension to build, all while preparing for my ultimate revenge. I could feel the walls closing in on Jessica, and it thrilled me to know she was living in a state of uncertainty. As the weekend approached, I got word from my friend in HR that they were pulling Greg in for a meeting about his behavior. I felt a rush of satisfaction. The end was near, and soon enough, Jessica would realize that her little affair would cost her much more than just a fling. It would cost her the comfort of our life together. The day of Greg's meeting in HR was upon us, and I felt a mix of anticipation and excitement. I knew that everything I had orchestrated was about to come to fruition. I spent the morning in a haze of energy, barely able to focus on work. The thought of Greg facing the consequences of his actions fueled me, and I reveled in the power I felt. When I got home that evening, Jessica was already there, lounging on the couch. She looked up as I walked in, a smile plastered on her face, but I saw through it. "Hey, how was your day?" she asked, feigning interest. "Busy," I replied curtly, my mind racing with thoughts of what was happening at work. "How about yours?" "Oh, you know, the usual," she said, glancing away as she reached for her phone. I could tell she was about to make some excuse to text Greg. It made my blood boil. "I'm sure you had some exciting meetings," I said, sarcasm dripping from my voice. "Did you get to see your favorite security guard?" Her reaction was immediate. She froze, the color draining from her face. "What do you mean?" "Don't play dumb, Jess. You know exactly what I'm talking about." I crossed my arms, leaning against the kitchen doorway, feeling the tension crackle between us. "Jake, please, I told you it was nothing, just a silly crush." She stammered, desperation creeping into her voice. "A silly crush that's going to cost Greg his job," I said, my voice low and steady. Her eyes widened, and I could see panic setting in. "What did you do?" I leaned closer, letting my words sink in. "Let's just say I had a little chat with HR. They're not too pleased with him right now." She glared at me, a mix of anger and fear swirling in her expression. "You can't just ruin someone's life like that." but I could hear the fear in her voice. It dawned on me that she was more worried about the consequences for her than for Greg. I can do whatever I want, Jess. You made your choice, and now he'll face the music. For a moment, silence hung in the air, thick and heavy. I could see the wheels turning in her mind, realizing just how far I was willing to go. You're being vindictive, she finally said, her voice shaky. Am I? I challenged, leaning in closer. Maybe I'm just giving you a taste of what it feels like to lose something important. You should have thought about that before you decided to betray me. She opened her mouth, probably to throw another excuse my way, but I cut her off. No more lies, no more pretending. You wanted to play with fire, and now you're getting burned. I turned and walked out of the room, leaving her standing there, wide-eyed and uncertain. I felt a surge of satisfaction. I had taken control of the situation, and it felt liberating. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was the one calling the shots. The following days were a whirlwind. I received confirmation from my friend in HR that Greg had been let go. I felt a rush of triumph knowing he would no longer be able to sneak around with Jessica, but I also knew I wasn't done yet. She still needed to understand the full weight of her actions. When I got home that evening, Jessica was visibly shaken. She was sitting on the couch, her usual bright demeanor dimmed. Jake, can we talk? She asked, her voice trembling. Talk about what? I replied, a steely edge to my tone. About Greg, she said, her eyes pleading. I know you had him fired, and I'm truly sorry for what I did. I realize how much I've hurt you, and I want to try and fix this. I couldn't help but scoff. Fix this? You think it can just be fixed with a few words? You shattered my trust, Jess. You can't just say sorry and pretend everything is fine. Please, she continued, tears welling in her eyes. I want to make it right. I love you, and I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Love, I repeated, incredulous. How can you say that? You've been lying and sneaking around with another man. That's not love, Jess. That's betrayal. She reached out, trying to touch my arm, but I stepped back. Don't. You don't get to act like the victim here. You made your choices, and now you have to deal with the consequences. The conversation escalated into a heated argument, her desperation clashing with my anger. I could see her crumbling under the weight of the situation. For once she looked small and vulnerable, and for a moment I felt a flicker of pity, but it quickly faded. I had to stay strong. I'm not going to let you manipulate me into forgiving you, I said firmly. You wanted to have your cake and eat it too, and now you're left with nothing. Maybe this will teach you a lesson. Her sobs filled the room, and I felt a mix of satisfaction and guilt. I had won the battle, but the emotional toll was heavy on both of us. I wanted to believe that things could return to some semblance of normal, but deep down, I knew it would take a long time, if ever, for that to happen. The aftermath of Greg's firing rippled through our lives. Jessica was forced to confront the reality of her actions, and I was left grappling with my own feelings of betrayal. I felt a sense of power now that I had taken those steps, but I also felt lost. What would happen next? Could we move forward from this, or was this the beginning of the end? The days that followed Greg's firing felt like a blur of emotions. One moment I was basking in the satisfaction of having taken control, and the next I was drowning in the weight of Jessica's despair. She was desperate to communicate, to explain, and to plead for forgiveness, but I found it increasingly difficult to engage with her. Every time she approached me, I was reminded of the betrayal. It felt like a raw wound that wouldn't heal. I wanted to believe she could change, that we could rebuild something, but the trust had been shattered beyond repair. One evening, after yet another awkward silence over dinner, Jessica finally broke down. Jake, I don't know what else to do. I'm sorry, she said between sobs. I messed up. I know that, but I need you to understand that it was a mistake. I never meant to hurt you. I looked at her, searching for sincerity in her eyes, but all I saw was a desperate woman clinging to the remnants of the life we once had. You said that before, Jess, but what does it mean if you keep doing things that hurt me? What's to stop you from doing something like this again? I don't want to lose you. I love you, she begged, her voice cracking. I'll do anything to fix this. I'll go to counseling. I'll do whatever it takes. Just please give me a chance. Her pleas struck a chord within me, a tiny flicker of hope mixed with a mountain of doubt. I could tell she was genuinely remorseful, but I couldn't help but wonder if it was too little, too late. I remembered the moments we shared, the love that once flourished between us, but they felt like distant memories now. I don't know, Jess, I said, my voice heavy with uncertainty. You're asking me to forgive something that feels unforgivable. Just saying you're sorry isn't enough. She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. I understand. I don't want to lose the life we built together. I sighed, feeling the pressure of the decision weighing down on me. You have to understand this isn't just about you. I need time to process everything. Maybe I need space to think. Space, she echoed, her voice barely above a whisper. Are you saying you want to separate? I hesitated, the word hung heavily in the air. I don't know what I'm saying. I just know I can't pretend this didn't happen. I need to think about what I want. The next few days were agonizing. Jessica tried her best to prove her commitment, attending couples counseling and suggesting we engage in activities to reconnect. But I was on autopilot, going through the motions while my heart remained locked away. I felt like I was standing at a crossroads, unable to decide which path to take. One evening, after another tense day, I took a walk to clear my head. I wandered aimlessly through our neighborhood, lost in my thoughts. I passed by a park where we used to spend weekends, laughing and enjoying each other's company. The memories cut deep, and I felt a wave of sadness wash over me. As I sat on a bench, the cool breeze brushing against my skin, I realized that I couldn't keep living in this limbo. I needed to make a decision, either to forgive Jessica and try to rebuild our relationship or to cut ties and move forward without her. That night, I came home and found Jessica sitting at the dining table, a nervous expression on her face. Jake, we need to talk, she said, her voice shaky. I know, I replied, taking a deep breath. I've been thinking a lot about us, about everything. I don't want this to drag on indefinitely. Her eyes lit up with a glimmer of hope, but I quickly tempered it. However, I need to be honest. I can't just forget what happened. I can't trust you right now, and rebuilding takes time. I don't know if I'm ready to commit to that. Jessica's expression shifted to one of fear and disappointment. What are you saying? Are you telling me we should end this? I'm saying we need to take a step back, I replied, my voice steady. I need some time to think about what I truly want. I can't keep pretending everything is okay when it is. She looked down, tears welling in her eyes again. I never wanted to hurt you, Jake, I swear. I'll do anything to make it right. I believe you, I said, feeling my own emotions threaten to spill over. But I need to do what's best for me right now. I can't keep living this way. That night, we agreed to take some time apart. It was a decision that felt both empowering and heartbreaking. I packed a small bag and headed to my brother's place on the other side of town. It was a temporary solution, a way to gain clarity without the constant reminders of what we once had. In the days that followed, I allowed myself to feel the weight of everything that had happened. I reflected on the relationship, the good and the bad, and what I truly wanted moving forward. I had spent so long focused on revenge and the hurt she had caused that I had neglected to consider my own feelings and needs. I spoke with my brother about everything, receiving advice and support that helped me see things from a new perspective. He reminded me that while betrayal was painful, it didn't have to define my future. I had the power to choose how to move on, whether that meant rebuilding with Jessica or starting anew. As I delved deeper into my thoughts, I realized that while Jessica had hurt me, I needed to focus on healing myself. I began to think about what a future without her might look like. Did I really want to rebuild the trust that had been shattered? Could I ever truly forgive her? By the time I returned to my home, I felt somewhat more grounded in my decision. I knew that whatever path I chose, I had to prioritize my own happiness and well-being. I had learned that I had the power to take control of my life, to make choices that were right for me, and that was empowering. As I returned home, the familiar sight of our house loomed before me, filled with memories of both love and betrayal. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. I had spent the past few weeks reflecting on my feelings, my priorities, and what I truly wanted. But deep down, I knew that I had to confront Jessica one last time. When I stepped inside, I found her sitting on the couch, anxiously fiddling with her phone. The look on her face, hope mingled with fear, was both familiar and unsettling. She looked up as I entered, her expression softening. "Jake, you're back," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah, I wanted to talk," I replied, my heart racing. I had rehearsed this conversation in my mind 1,000 times, but now that I was here, the words felt heavy. "Is everything okay?" she asked, concern etched across her features. I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. I've had a lot of time to think about us, about what happened, and about what I want moving forward. Jessica's eyes widened, and I could see the hope flickering back to life. "I'll do better, Jake, I promise. I know I messed up, but I've been working on myself. I'll go to counseling, whatever it takes." I was struck by her desperation, but I couldn't let that sway my decision. "Jess, this is just about promises or counseling. It's about trust. You broke that trust, and I can't ignore it. I can't pretend that everything will go back to normal just because you say it will." She looked down, her shoulders slumping. "I know I hurt you, and I know what I did was unforgivable, but I love you and I want to make it right. I'll do anything." "I appreciate that," I said, my voice steady. "But I've realized that I need to prioritize my own happiness too. I can't just sweep everything under the rug and pretend things are fine." She swallowed hard, realization dawning on her. Are you saying you want to end this?" "It's not what I wanted, but I need time to heal. I think we both do." I could see the hurt in her eyes, but I had to stay firm. "I think it's best for both of us to take a break. We need to figure out who we are outside of this relationship." Jessica's expression shifted from confusion to sadness. "But I don't want to lose you," she whispered, tears brimming in her eyes. "I know," I said softly, feeling my own resolve crack. "But sometimes losing each other might be the only way to find ourselves again. I can't keep living in the past. I need to focus on my own healing." Her tears fell freely now, and my heart ached for the woman I had shared so much with. It was a decision that filled me with sorrow, but I knew it was necessary. "I wish you the best, Jess. I really hope you find happiness and learn from this experience." We stood in silence for a moment, both of us grappling with the weight of what was happening. It felt like a final chapter closing, our history packed away with all the good and all the bad. "I don't want to say goodbye," she said, her voice trembling. "Then don't," I replied, trying to hold back my own tears. "But we need to let each other go, for now at least." With that, I turned and walked out of the room, the sound of her quiet sobs echoing in my ears. It was a painful separation, but I knew that I was taking the first steps toward reclaiming my life. In the days that followed, I focused on myself. I started exercising, reconnecting with friends, and rediscovering the passions I had set aside for our relationship. I began to heal, piece by piece, and it felt liberating. I learned that love doesn't always mean holding on. Sometimes it means letting go. Months passed, and while the memories of Jessica would always remain a part of my life, they no longer held the power they once did. I learned valuable lessons about trust, self-worth, and the importance of prioritizing one's own happiness. Looking back, I can say that the experience was painful, but it also taught me resilience. I learned that I had the power to control my own destiny and that heartbreak can lead to growth. As I moved forward, I hoped that Jessica would find her own path toward healing, just as I was finding mine. Sometimes the hardest decisions lead to the most rewarding outcomes, and I was ready to embrace whatever came next. I had faced betrayal and emerged stronger. I was ready to write my own story, one where I was in control, and that felt like a victory in itself.